Clash Royale has seen cards go from trash to totally broken, and every card has had its peak. Today we're going over the strongest state of every single card, the moments they shattered the meta and made Clash Royale feel insane. And yes, this is going to be a long one, so grab some snacks. Skeletons were actually the first 1 Elixir card ever added to Clash Royale back in beta, but here's the thing, cycling wasn't really a big deal yet. Most players were focused on stacking Elixir and building massive pushes, not fast-paced cycle. So while skeletons were cheap, they didn't really have a home in the meta. In February of 2016, they got their first buff, an 11% boost to health and damage. That helped a little, but still, skeletons weren't exactly the stars of the show. Then just a few months later, on May 18th, they were buffed yet again, this time by another 5% to both health and damage. And that's also the moment when things started to shift. Around this time, cycle decks with Hog Rider and Miner started becoming more popular, and suddenly a 1 Elixir card that could defend, distract, and cycle was insanely valuable. But let's be real, the buffs weren't even the most important part. What truly made skeletons shine was their skeleton count. Back then, they actually spawned 4 skeletons, not 3. That was the golden age of Larry. 4 skeletons for just 1 elixir meant you could trade way more efficiently, shut down threats, and keep your cycle rolling. This was probably the true prime of skeletons. Although, was it really their prime? If we skip ahead a solid 8 years later to the card evolution update, we see the skeletons be one of the original 4 evolutions. The evolved skeletons would spawn a new skeleton every hit, and they would spawn in a count of 4 again. They had potential when they first arrived, but there could only be a maximum of 6 at a time. 11 days later, they got a buff to have the maximum count of 8. Cool improvement, but they required 3 cycles, which made them hard to play and actually use in a game. But on the 8th of August, this count dropped from 3 cycles down to 2, making these skeletons an absolute menace. However, they toned down his maximum count, turning it back to 6. Larry wasn't done yet though, because on the 3rd of October, that change would be reverted, allowing skeletons to reach their final form. 2 cycles, maximum of 8 skeletons, and all of that for 1 elixir. This version of skeletons could shut down nearly everything. They respawned so quickly that they could even take down an Electro Giant. Absolutely crazy. When the Ice Spirit first entered the game, it was basically broken right out of the gate. With a 2-second freeze and way too much damage for its cost, it gave you an unreal amount of defensive value for just 1 elixir. In fact, it dealt enough damage that the Princess Tower could one-shot minions after it connected. For cycle decks, it was the ultimate safety net, cheap, reliable, and able to completely swing defenses in your favor. But Ice Spirit's story doesn't end in the early days. Fast forward to March 5th, 2024, and we hit another peak, the Evolution Ice Spirit. At this point, the card was on a 2-card cycle, and its evolution form could freeze 3 separate times with a 2-tile radius. That level of control for 1 elixir was just absurd. I mean, just look at this.
Let's go over here with the high furnace. This should still pull it, and it does. Nice, because dude, I do not be pulling the balloons sometimes with my cards. It's miserable. Okay, we'll go over here. Let's rage real quick. That should be enough to defend that.
I can go for my Evo Ice Spirit here on top of that Mega Knight, and then I can go for my Low Mighty Miner. Wait, look at that Evo Ice Spirit. It's just freezing the Mega Knight over and over again, and the Bandit. And again, perfect defense. Nice. I actually took 0 damage. Evo Ice Spirit carried there. Bowler. Then I can Evo Ice Spirit here on top of the Goblin Giant. I kind of need this actually because the Goblin Giant was pretty healthy and my cannon was dead. Wow. That Evo Ice Spirit made me take no damage where normally I would have probably taken like maybe 600-700 damage.
Okay, how do we defend here? Wait, we can just go for the Evo Ice Spirit. It's gonna keep on resetting this Sparky over and over. It doesn't really splash well though. I mean, that was pretty good. I wouldn't mind if Sparky dies.
The Evo Ice Spirit was oppressive, and it became one of the most impactful evolutions Clash Royale had ever released. Now, flipping to the other side of the coin, we have the Fire Spirit, and the strongest state for this guy has gotta be the day when it got reworked in 2021. For the very few people who didn't know, we used to get 3 of these little guys for 2 elixir, but then in 2021, they reduced the elixir cost to 1, and the count also went down to 1. But in exchange, we got more health, damage, and a huge splash radius. And I do mean huge. You could fully counter a Goblin Barrel for just 1 elixir. And from that point onward, the Fire Spirit only ever received nerfs. The next 1 elixir card is yet again a spirit. Surprise, surprise. And for the Electro Spirit, it's kind of hard to say when its strongest state was. Seriously, this guy never really received any nerfs or buffs. I assume its strongest state would have been right before the Evo Ice Spirit evolution was released, as that gave him the fairest competition. The Heal Spirit was released on April 2nd, 2020, and it actually replaced the old Heal spell. The Heal spell was never really that strong. It was underused, awkward to balance, and eventually removed altogether, and replaced with, the Heal Spirit. Supercell figured a troop version would be easier to manage, and that's how the Heal Spirit was born. And honestly, the Heal Spirit came out swinging. It was probably at its strongest right from the start, since every change it's received since has only been a nerf. One of the best examples of this was with Royal Hogs. Normally, Royal Hogs would get fireballed and survive with just a sliver of health, but the Heal Spirit could instantly bring them back to life, letting them push through and deal some real devastating damage. For just 1 elixir, that was some insane value. But just like the heal spell before it, the Heal Spirit was tricky to balance. It was either way too strong or it felt completely useless. Despite its powerful debut, the card slowly fell out of favor, and over time, it just couldn't maintain that same level of impact it had on release. Now on to the 2 elixir cards, but before we move on, I do want to ask you to, consider dropping a sub to this channel. These videos take a long time to make, and it means the world to me if you subscribed. All right. Back to the video. The first 2 elixir card I want to talk about is the Berserker, because this card has made a surprising rise in top ladder. When she was first released at the start of 2025, she was laughed at and memed on. No one even considered using her. She was given a few small buffs, but even then people just couldn't care less. But on August 2nd, Boss uploads a video and shows some of the developments made in the top 200 ladder. 35 of the 200 decks in the top 200 are using the Berserker. That's a 17.5% usage rate, which is insane, considering no buffs or reworks. And on the 10th of August, we see Boss comparing her usage rate to the Knight, one of the most reliable cards for years. Just look at what Boss found out here.
Inside this new Royal Giant deck, but she's used in so many different decks, whether it is Minor Cycle, Mortar, Drill, and even Bait. Now, if we compare her to the Knight, you guys are gonna see it is going to be significantly more. Only 6 people using the regular Knight. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. You guys are probably like, wait, Boss, there's an Evolved Knight. I know, guys, I know. So let's put in the Evolved Knight and combine the 2 totals together. The Evolved Knight, there are 16 people using inside of the top 200. So if you add the 6 and the 16, it is going to be 22, which means the Berserker, there are significantly more people using the Berserker compared to the Knight inside of the top 200.
So after seeing that, I think it's more than safe to say that the Berserker's strongest state has to be either August or September of 2025. It's gonna be an interesting card to follow. For most of its life, Rage was a pretty terrible card. It was only really ever seen when something else in the game was broken. Think Elixir Golem, Phoenix, or other busted cards that needed a boost to push through. On its own, Rage was basically useless. That all changed though in 2022 when the card got a major rework. The radius was made smaller, but now it actually dealt damage on cast. This completely changed how Rage was used. Suddenly it wasn't just a win more card, you could use it like a mini zap, clearing out swarms while buffing your push at the same time. For the first time, Rage became a truly viable spell, even replacing Zap in a bunch of decks. Since then, Rage has had some incredibly overpowered moments, like during the Goblin Curse era, or in the P.E.K.K.A Ram Rider decks where it could just swing an entire push in your favor. But if we're talking about its absolute strongest state, nothing comes close to February of 2025, and I'm speaking specifically about the 3rd of February till the 11th. That was when we got the Lumberjack evolution, and it completely broke the game. When the Evo Lumberjack died, he spawned a ghost that couldn't be damaged or targeted. The only way to remove it was to wait until the rage effect ended. But here's the thing, you could cast the actual rage spell to prolong his life, making the ghost stick around even longer.
So guys, I'm just gonna probably go for this at 10. Yeah, I'm just gonna go for this at 10. I don't know what ground cards he has here. Okay, perhaps nothing. But we have such a quick cycle here, man. We just go for the Evo Dark Goblin. This guy literally can't defend the Evo Lumberjack. Like, all we have to... Okay, don't pull back. No. Do not pull yourself back. We get the Rage off here, guys, and I have the Mirrored Rage as well, so that's not going to take the tower, but we go for the Mirror Rage, and that will take the tower. Just like that. But guys, this is so incredibly far from over right now.
I'm tanking out the lane. I know it's going to do 10,000 damage. Yeah, skeleton bow. Okay, I'm doing the gimmick. I don't care. Nothing's going to stop me. Nothing will stop me. Yeah, you like that, you prick. Yeah, nothing hits it. I don't know if you caught the memo. Nothing! Oh, where's my tower gone? Where's my tower gone, mummy? Help me, Kenny's too powerful.
On the 11th though, Lumberjack's ghost could no longer be kept alive with another rage, but for the 8 days that synergy was in the game, it was absolutely insane, and it turned rage into the most powerful it has ever been in Clash Royale history. A little unfortunate that its heyday was brought around by a bug though.
But it's okay. I'm just going to go for the Evo Lumberjack Hog Rider here. I know this is going to be kind of a pain to defend just because of how strong... No way he has NATO, right? Okay, I was going to say no, wait. Let's Evo Musk here on the Stein. Take out the Scientist. We'll take it out in a second here. Just need it to stop shooting other things. Nice, okay. Let's go for our own Lumberjack here again. Get another one down. 1, 2, 3. Let's rage this up. Keep the Lumberjack alive. And look at that, guys. The Lumberjack is still alive. And then the other Lumberjack rage is going to continue keeping the Lumberjack alive. And he's running out of elixir. The Bomber dies to the Evo Lumberjack. And then we're going to get another Evo Lumberjack at the bridge. Oh my, wow. This is actually insane. I was trying to warn you guys how insane this combo is, guys. I was trying to warn you. Lumberjack turn around. Okay, there's the cannon cart, man. That Evo Lumberjack's going to take out the entire cannon cart. I'm going to rage this up, keep it alive, because maybe it could even take out the Goblin Stein Scientist. And it is! Oh my god. Let's get another Lumberjack down. He's wasting the Evo Mortar. It's still alive. It finally dies. The Mortar dies instantly. Let's go for the rage here, take out the guards. Even he had to say, wow, man, that is actually insane.
So I know earlier I spoke about rage replacing Zap, and that might seem a bit rude, but trust me, Zap has had its moments too. When Zap first came out in 2016, it was on another level compared to what we have today. Back then, it could one-shot stab goblins, which meant it was a full counter to Goblin Barrel. On top of that, it came with a 1-second stun, basically a mini freeze for just 2 elixir, and if that wasn't enough, Zap also dealt 40% damage to crown towers, compared to the 30% it does now. The only real drawback was that its stun didn't affect the Inferno Tower, which made that particular matchup a little tougher. But aside from that, Zap was insanely reliable, and the funny part is, ever since its release, Zap has only been nerfed. That's why a lot of people would say the 2016 version was at its peak. But then came the evolved Zap, and suddenly the conversation gets a lot more interesting. On release, Evo Zap was absurd. It essentially gave you 3 zaps for the price of 1. Each consecutive strike covered a larger radius, and each one could also reset things like Sparky or Inferno Dragon. And to make it even crazier, the first version of Evo Zap had no damage drop-off, which meant it could delete cards like Mother Witch or Archer without a problem. So depending on how you look at it, Zap's strongest state is either the original 2016 version or the launch of Evo Zap, which might have been the most broken spell evolution Clash Royale has ever seen. The Ice Golem has always been a solid tank for just 2 elixir, but its absolute strongest state came just a few months after its release. Back then, its death radius was 3 tiles, which meant that its death explosion could wipe out an entire skeleton army dropped in front of your Hog Rider. On top of that, the slowing effect lasted 3 full seconds, giving your troops way more time to clean up defenses. For a cheap mini-tank, that was some insane value. There's also one infamous moment in Ice Golem's history that you cannot ignore, the rocket glitch. For a short time, you could actually place an Ice Golem in front of your X-Bow and completely negate all the damage from a rocket. Yep, a 2 elixir card could counter an entire 6 elixir spell.
Use a rocket on an X-Bow if they even have the rocket. But look here, you can see that the X-Bow does not take any damage, and that's why they're throwing out out the laugh taunts there because it's pretty funny.
Now, obviously, that got patched relatively quickly, but it shows just how busted Ice Golem could be in the right circumstances. So while Ice Golem has stayed relevant as a kiting tool and a support unit, its peak was without a doubt in those early months, when it wasn't just a cheap utility, but one of the most reliable defensive tools in the entire game. When the Goblin Curse was first released, it was hands down at its strongest state, and funny enough, it wasn't even the Goblin transformation that made it so busted. It was the damage amplification. Shout out to Ken.
Called the Goblin Curse. It's 2 elixir. Damage amplification. I have no idea what that means. Goblin Curse amplifies the damage, turns any swarm unit into goblins for me. Which, by the way, did you know Goblin Curse does damage amplification? That's the great thing about Goblin Curse. It's got that damage amplification. Say it with me. Damage amplification. Try and amplify that damage. The damage amplification. That damage amplification. Let's go for a Goblin Curse for that damage amplification. It's going to become goblins and hopefully help kill that and damage amplified. God, I'm liking this. I can't lie. I'm liking the way this stick feels in my hands.
Right now, Goblin Curse has gotten its damage amplification completely removed. But at launch, it didn't just have damage amplification of 20% like before. It had a jaw-dropping 50% damage amplification.
Oh, this is gonna be fun. Oh, here we go. Here comes the curse. Here comes the curse. Are you ready for it? Okay, no, this card's done. No, it literally instantly kills the P.E.K.K.A. because your tower does 50% more damage to everything as well.
And this should be an easy defense. Just hit him with the Goblin Curse plus Electro Spirit, and he'll have to like deal with a bunch of goblins out of nowhere. Yeah, look at that. I turned every lava pup into goblins. This card just seems so unreal, guys. I can't believe this is what they're adding, and then I'll just drop another one. Dude, Goblin Curse Cycle is going to be so broken. I think I could start hitting him with some Rocket Cycle, honestly. Let's go. Okay, wait. Pop the ability here, keep this alive, and now I have another Goblin Curse again. I could start making everything take a bunch of damage again. Oh, he did it too, but it... Oh, what the heck? Bro, what the... Wait. What the... What? Oh my god. How did I get that many? Bro, what? Hello? Dude, this card is unreal. Bro, it's gonna spawn goblins on his tower again. What is wrong with Supercell?
For just 2 elixir, your troops were dealing half again as much damage as they normally would. Even after this nerf, it still sat at 35%, which was ridiculous in its own right. And if that wasn't enough, the spell radius was larger too, 4 tiles compared to the current 3. So not only were your troops hitting harder, but it was also way easier to tag multiple units in a push.
How many bajillion of goblins did I just have there? They just immediately died. I'm cursing that. What? Wait, where did that skeleton come from up top? Oh god.
Oh, he did it too, but it... Oh, what the heck? Bro, what the... Wait. What the... What? Oh my god. How did I get that many? Bro.
The truth is, Goblin Curse would have been completely broken even if it didn't transform troops at all. Just imagine a cheap spell that let your push dish out 50% more damage. It didn't need anything else to be overpowered. Pre-nerf Goblin Curse was easily one of the most absurd states any card has ever been in. When you think of strong spells in Clash Royale, the Log almost instantly comes to mind. Even today, after countless nerfs, it is still incredibly versatile. For just 2 Elixir, it can counter Goblin Barrel, Princess, Dark Goblin, and plenty of other cards while giving you a positive trade. On top of that, it can knock back ground troops and even reset charge attacks from cards like the Prince or Battle Ram. But here's the thing, the Log wasn't always this good. In fact, when it first released in 2016, it was considered not just the worst legendary, but one of the worst cards in the entire game. It was unbelievably slow, had a short rolling distance, and most importantly, it couldn't knock back all troops. Nobody played it, and it quickly became a joke. So the balance team had to step in. On August 28, 2016, the Log got its first buff. Its casting speed nearly doubled, and the rolling speed was increased. This meant you could drop it quicker and it would travel across the arena a little faster. Better, sure, but it still wasn't legendary worthy. That changed just about a month later. The Log received a buff that would completely redefine it. It was now able to push back all ground troops by 1.5 tiles. For comparison, today's knockback is only 0.7, more than double. This was huge. Suddenly the Log could reset Prince and Dark Prince charges or even cause a Royal Giant to retarget. Finally, the card had a unique identity, but Supercell of course didn't stop there. A month after, the Log got buffed again. Casting speed, faster. Rolling speed, faster. Distance increased from 9.6 tiles to 11.6. This absurd range meant you could counter a Goblin Barrel and then keep on rolling all the way to a Princess at the bridge, taking out both with one single card. And to top all that off, the Log's damage was increased by 8.5%. Something else worth mentioning at the time, the Log dealt 40% damage to crown towers instead of today's 20%. A low-level Log back then could deal 104 tower damage, compared to just 85 at level 15 today. This was the peak of Log. It went from a joke to not just the best spell, but arguably the best card in the entire game. With a near 80% usage rate, it was absolutely everywhere. It cleared swarms, chipped towers, reset charges, and shut down win conditions with ease. The Log couldn't hit air units, yeah, but that was about its only limitation. For a time, it wasn't just strong, it defined Clash Royale. The bats were at their strongest right after release when they were quickly buffed from 4 units to 5. They've stayed at 5 ever since, but back then they also had a faster hit speed, which made them even more dangerous as a cheap swarm card. The other peak came years later with the evolved bats. I wonder if you're sensing a bit of a theme here. About a month after release, they were absolutely busted. Their first hit speed was just 0.3 seconds, which let them shred through troops instantly and heal back quicker thanks to their evolution ability. Didn't take long before they were toned down, but for that brief window, bats were as oppressive as they've ever been.
Okay, give me 1 second, and now goes out. Goes out. Yeah, there we go. Boom, they survived.
Wait. Well, what happens if I wait like 1 second?
The Bomber has been around since day one, and over the years it's bounced between 2 and 3 Elixir, going through plenty of changes, but nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to the evolved Bomber.
Dude, the cannoneer.
Oh! It shoots it like a freaking magic archer. It doesn't bounce like an electro. Ah, my god, no!
On release, his bombs would actually ricochet, stacking damage across multiple troops. It was basically like having a magic archer on steroids, but for just 2 Elixir. And the craziest part, his evolution had a 1-card cycle. That meant you could spam this busted version of Bomber constantly. Oh, and just to make things even more ridiculous, he could survive arrows, a 2 Elixir card that shredded The Spear Goblins have never really been overpowered, but if we're talking about their strongest state, it was probably in 2024. At that point, they had a solid range, a fast attack speed, and overall just fit really well into the meta. They weren't breaking the game by any means, but they were in a surprisingly good spot. Reliable, efficient, and way more useful than most people gave them credit for. For regular goblins, their peak was probably in 2022, right after their count got bumped from 3 to 4. For a lot of players, they basically replaced skeletons in cycle decks, the same number of units but with way higher DPS, and the ability to survive Zap, all just for 1 extra Elixir. That tiny change made them suddenly super appealing, and for a while, they felt like one of the most efficient defensive cards in the entire game. At launch, Giant Snowball was actually kind of a joke. The damage was so low, the radius felt underwhelming, and compared to Zap or Log, it didn't really justify its spot in a deck. but with a few small buffs over time, it gave it the push it needed, slowly turning it from why would I ever use this into a legit 2 elixir option. The strongest version of Snowball, though, might actually be its current state. In the 2023 balance changes, its slow duration got increased to a full 3 seconds, and that's where things really started to click. It's easy to underestimate Snowball, but when combined with your Princess Tower, it can fully counter a Goblin Barrel, scatter cheap swarms, and even shut down a wizard without taking tower damage. And then came the evolution. The Evo Snowball from just a few patches ago was completely nuts. Pair it with Goblin Drill, it practically guaranteed tower damage. It rolls a full 4.5 tiles, scoops up any troop in its way, and slaps on a 4-second slow. It's not just a utility spell anymore, it became a win condition enabler, which is wild to say about Snowball. Right now, evolved wall breakers are absolutely busted. You don't even need to think about their attack potential. For just 2 elixir, you can drop them on a big push, you need to counter, and it's basically like casting a mini fireball. The evolution is what makes them truly insane though. That explosion damage can shred swarms, weaken glass cannon troops, and punish sloppy placements instantly, all at an absurdly low cost. In terms of value and utility, Evo wall breakers are easily one of the strongest 2 elixir cards in the game right now. Another card that is great on defense is the Barbarian Barrel. Now on paper, it's a shorter, narrower log. You'll lose the knockback to all troops and the same level of damage, so why even use it? The answer? It spawns a Barbarian. I mean, it's in the name. That little extra troop can defend, chip, or even help push back. But when it first came out, that wasn't enough. For the first few months, Barbarian Barrel cost 3 elixir, and while it dealt knockback, it didn't affect all troops like Log did. It just wasn't worth it. Everything changed though when the elixir cost dropped to 2. Suddenly, Barbarian Barrel would start providing some real value. Not even a month later, the balancing team added a few more buffs: faster casting, faster rolling, and quicker Barbarian spawn speed. That was the card's peak state. At that point, players were even replacing Log with Barbarian Barrel, and that's saying something, because Log has rarely been bad outside of its first few clunky months. Barbarian Barrel could do almost everything the Log did, minus the crown tower damage, while also spawning a Barbarian that could defend or attack. That brief window was easily the strongest state of Barbarian Barrel and one of the best examples of a card perfectly hitting its stride.
In today's video, I'm going to be playing with my Dick, my Log, and my Bush to try and make the most annoying strategy possible, so let's max out the Suspicious Bush, baby.
Suspicious Bush has never really been a powerhouse. It's not a card that ever dominated the meta, and it's never really had a truly broken state. That said, if we're talking purely stats, its current version is technically the strongest it's ever been. High HP, decent survivability, it's just still not something you'd build a deck around.
Speedy Bush, does it work here? Oh, that's even better! Holy smokes! That's significantly better than whatever the frick I was doing before. This is making me angry.
Now on to the 3 elixir cards. Let's start with one of the simplest cards in Clash Royale, that being arrows. They have no fancy magic, no weird effects, just raw, reliable damage. But don't let that simplicity fool you. Arrows have had their moments of true dominance. Arguably their strongest state came in 2019, when they were buffed to deal 3 volleys of damage instead of 1. That change let arrows completely dominate swarm cards like guards, clone spell copies, and other small troops, while also dealing more damage to crown towers. Back then, if you were running a cheap spell to control the board, arrows were the go-to. That said, their peak wasn't just about raw stats. Today, arrows have become an essential tool in evolved metas. With cards like Evo Firecracker, Evo Bomber, and Evo Wall Breakers, arrows are practically a necessity. Log and Zap simply can't clear these threats efficiently, giving arrows a level of strategic importance that arguably makes them stronger today than their 2019 peak, even if their numbers are slightly lower. Archers hit their peak right out of the gate with their evolution. Suddenly a 3 elixir card could survive arrows, deal double damage, and hit from 6.5 tiles away. Yeah, that was absolutely nuts. They're definitely not terrible today, but their use has become much more niche. Outside of Expo 3.0, we rarely see them in serious decks. At their evolution launch though, archers were easily one of the most oppressive range troops in the game for their cost. Knight hit its absolute peak with its evolution, and holy, it was insane. With 80% damage reduction and 130% of its original health, it could survive hits that would normally obliterate other 3 elixir troops. This Evo was so busted, it resulted in clips like these.
But he was dead, bro. Pull this shit out of there, he'll go do himself on the feet by himself. There's something wrong with him. That's not him.
What I'm doing, I think this is bad, so I'm just gonna chill with what I got. I'm gonna eat a little bit of damage, soak up the sponge damage with the knight, and wait, the knight hasn't taken any damage. And one-shots goblins too. That's so disgusting. Oh my gosh, that's revolting. Is he seriously gonna lock onto the tower through all that? There's no way! There's no way!
For Graveyard here. So he's gonna drop the Phoenix, and now we're gonna see a perfect prime example of how good the Evo Knight is. Look at the tankage the Evo Knight does, guys. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. I cannot believe that the Knight is dealing so much damage.
Okay, we have to go all in. Gonna Evo Knight. That takes no damage from the fireball. Oh, I think he's dead. He's gonna probably barbs. We can NATO this in. Don't even care about the King Tower.
I'm gonna Knight and I'm gonna Balloon. Now this Knight is gonna tank for the Balloon. He's got Fireball, so I gotta be careful of that too. But we're gonna go Arrows here, predict something. We gotta keep him moving, and the arrows were beautiful. The arrows were beautiful, and look at this. He's gonna shred the Ice Wizard. He is still tanking for the Balloon. The Inferno Dragon is locked in on the other side, and we're gonna go with another Inferno Dragon, another Knight. And look at this Knight. He's about to go ham on the King Tower. This Knight is going ham. The DPS buff. This is what we were talking about earlier. The prediction on the Ice Wizard. The Evolved Knight is insane.
Then I'm going to go for my Goblin Barrel one tile in the back so he can't go for the barbs. What does he even do here? He goes for the Tombstone. I'll log right away as soon as I get enough. Okay, nice. And that Knight's going to live and tank for the barrel. Look at that Evo Knight. It tanked and I got the tower. Let's go.
By now you're probably noticing a pattern. Whenever a card gets an evolution, it's almost always its strongest state. And Knight is a perfect example of why. Raw survivability, insane value, and unmatched utility for just 3 elixir. Minions are pretty strong today, thanks to their increased range and solid DPS. But if we're talking about their absolute strongest state, we gotta go all the way back to 2016. Back then, there were fewer air counters, which made minions much more reliable and threatening. Statistically, they might be stronger now, but in terms of raw impact and value, the early days of minions were when they really shined. Cheap, versatile, and tough to answer, 2016 minions were quietly dominant. The cannon hit peak absurdly with its evolution. Suddenly, this cheap defensive building wasn't just a tank killer. It became a versatile support tool, and just to make things even crazier, the barrage damage got a 10% increase around the same time. Even after the radius of the bombs was reduced, the Evo Cannon was still insane. It wasn't just a defensive staple. You could use it to support Hog Rider pushes, help chip away at towers while controlling the battlefield. In terms of raw utility and impact, the evolution of Cannon was a complete game changer. But I do want to give a mention to the beta version of the cannon. Back then, all the buildings were beefier and overall a bigger roadblock for troops, but the cannon had the biggest change by far. The cannon during the beta had a 6 elixir cost and could live up to a full minute with an unbelievable amount of hit points. To make things crazier, it also had a range that could outrange musketeers, wizards, and pretty much anything you could think of. Despite this, I still think the evolved cannon is the strongest state it's ever been in.
Okay, I can Evo Spirit, maybe, yep. Evo Cannon here. I go for the Skellies to keep this alive for longer. The Liberty to block, and then I can go for the Ice Spirit to reset and my Queen lives.
Oh my god.
Now I think I could go for the Piggies at the bridge here. Maybe not because he has Valkyrie, but nah, I think it's worth it anyways. I'm gonna Piggies here. I'm gonna log for the Valk, Evo, because he has the Evo, then I ability immediately just to try to damage that. Nice, and you see my log reset the attack, so then the Piggies kept running instead of getting knocked back, and I won.
You're the GOAT. You're
Let's
the GOAT.
go!
No, you're actually the GOAT. You are the GOAT! Bro,
Yeah, I
nice
predicted the Valkyrie
defense!
with the log.
Really think that I'm going to be able to defend at some point. Maybe once he gets to the Evo Knight, let's Evo Cannon here. Pop the ability just to keep the Mighty Miner alive, then log. Beautiful. Goblins here to pull this over. One Princess Shot plus Log plus Evo Cannon Bomb does actually take out a Little Prince, guys. That interaction sounds crazy, but it's very important. Let's go for the Evo Barrel right now.
Go for the cannon here, unfortunately. Oh, we do knock the balloon back. That was actually kind of clutch right there. Guys, that was actually a quite clutch Evo cannon, I gotta say. And Evo Ice Spirit should come in clutch as well, certainly. Wow, what a defense right there. This guy's saying good game now.
I have Evo Cannon ready. He might try to Firecracker the bridge here on top of my Skelly, so I'm going to block it. Wait, I can Evo Cannon to take out his bats.
Nice, man.
Log here, Skelly's to push that one in. Oh, and the Goblin Gang. Nice.
That was huge. That was fucking huge, dude.
Ability here. Now everything's going to walk in and die. Oh, no way that walked away like that. It's okay. Wait, die. Come on. Nice.
Goblin Gang has always been a solid card, but their release date was probably the strongest. Back then, guards weren't nearly as good and Skeleton Army was the main alternative, but Goblin Gang offered more value, better DPS, and a split lane presence that made them extremely versatile. At release for just 3 Elixir, you get a high DPS swarm for both melee and ranged coverage, making Goblin Gang one of the most efficient and reliable defensive tools in the game. Even today, they're strong, but that early version had the perfect combination of stats and utility. Next up, Skeleton Barrel, and yeah, you guessed it, its evolution marked its strongest state. Surprise, surprise. Seriously, that version was wild. Double death damage, double skeletons, and all for just 3 Elixir. It wasn't a one-card cycle like some other busted evolutions, but the sheer value packed into a single barrel made it absolutely insane. It could wreck defenses, punish unprepared counters, and enable huge chip pushes, all while being deceptively cheap. Skeleton Barrel didn't just improve the card, it completely redefined its offensive potential. Next up is yet another evolution, the Firecracker. And if you think she's annoying now, let me take you back to her release.
So when they first released the Firecracker evolution, I didn't realize, but she can deal 1,000 damage with every one of these little circles and the main circle stacking planted right at the bridge. That's so busted. Bridge spamming her is basically auto win. 2,000 damage on the tower with everything tanking. Nothing's even getting through. It's the fact that she's hitting that P.E.K.K.A. Oh my god.
And this video is a perfect representation of, like, literally you're screwed and can't do anything against the Firecracker if you don't have arrows or fireball. Like look at it. I mean, it just stays on the map for so long. I mean, so this is kind of goes back to the point of why arrows and fireball are used so much right now, because if you do not have either one, you can't do anything. Now, this was a draft mode, but it just kind of shows how unbalanced, like, the game is right now. How having, like, one card alone pretty much just, like, wins you the match. Completely changed matchups, where it's like before it might have been like a 50-50 matchup or even like a bad matchup, but now just because you have that evolved Firecracker just like carries you the whole game. Like, look at that. That's the same Firecracker.
At the time, every single one of her sparks dealt stacked damage. That meant if your Princess Tower got hit by 3 sparks, it would take damage from all 3 individually, not just one. Suddenly, what felt like a small, harmless spark could add up to some serious chip damage over time, and as if that wasn't enough, she couldn't even be killed by arrows. There was no cheap, reliable counter to shut her down, which made defending against her incredibly frustrating.
There are currently 84 people inside of the top 200 right now using the Evolved Firecracker. So if that doesn't show how broken it is, I don't know what does. I mean, there are literally people quitting the game.
The Evolved Firecracker is broken. She can hit your tower from the bridge, doing massive amounts of damage, and there's very little counterplay to this. On top of that, she doesn't even get taken out by arrows. But it gets even crazier, because in some situations, the Firecracker can snipe the opposite lane tower, literally shooting across the map and doing massive damage. But she's also great at taking out these massive pushes. Truly one of the best evolutions. Leave a like and subscribe for more.
Her release wasn't just annoying, it was downright oppressive. She could punish poor placement, chip towers relentlessly, and survive spells that normally dealt with squishy troops. Players quickly realized that even a small misstep could cost them a ton of tower health.
He's gonna P.E.K.K.A, so I'll Ice Spirit to freeze it, and then I'll Evolve Firecracker the bridge. He's actually just dead. It's gonna retarget too. Yo, that Firecracker is gonna go in. Look at that one Firecracker. Look at the damage. And the other one. Wait, I can Skellies, and then I can Hog the bridge again. Okay, Skellies. And then Hog. How does he defend? He actually can't. I thought he would go opposite lane. Wait, that Ghost is gonna lose the 1v1 to the Firecrackers. No way. Ooh, Firecracker's still alive. Let's go.
Moving on to the next card, Royal Delivery. On paper, it's a fairly straightforward card, an area damage, air targeting spell with a medium radius and moderate damage, deployed only on your side of the arena. Once it lands, it spawns a single Royal Recruit, giving you some defensive value even after the spell connects. It's decent now, sure, but when it was first released, it was way stronger. The key? Knockback, and not just a tiny nudge. Royal Delivery would push troops a full tile back, which made it incredible for delaying pushes, stopping a ram rider, or interrupting a battle ram charge. And if that wasn't enough, right after release it also got a 27% damage increase, making it even more impactful. Later, the damage was slightly nerfed and eventually the knockback was removed. So the strongest version of Royal Delivery is undoubtedly the one with both knockback and that 27% damage buff. That combination made it versatile against a ton of different troops. In most cases, the damage and knockback alone could stop units cold, and then you still got a Royal Recruit at full health with a shield to launch a counter push. It wasn't just a spell, it was defense and offense in one package. Her 3 elixir version hasn't been that crazy to be honest, but then again, she's barely been out, so yeah, this is the Spirit Empress's strongest version. The Tombstone hit its peak right at release. Back then it had a longer lifetime and would spawn 6 skeletons upon destruction, more than enough to stop pushes in their tracks. In 2016, defensive buildings were a lot more impactful because Earthquake didn't exist yet and there were far fewer splash damage cards. Tombstone could single-handedly control lanes, stall tanks, and punish overextensions, making it one of the best defensive buildings in the game. Its early combination of high utility, strong skeleton output, and long life made it an absolute staple for solid defense, even if today it's seen as more of a niche pick. The Mega Minion was so dominant on release that players quickly named it the Meta Minion. For just a small elixir cost, it offered tankiness, hard-hitting single-target damage, and incredible survivability. Placed safely in the backline, Mega Minion could support pushes behind a giant or other tank, shredding troops that tried to block your path. On top of that, it was resistant to cheap spells like Zap or Arrows, making it extremely difficult to counter efficiently. Its combination of low cost, durability, and damage output made it a must-include card for many decks during this period. Next up, Dart Goblin, and yes, its evolution absolutely took it to another level. Suddenly, this 3 elixir troop became like an area damage Inferno Tower on the move. Every dart it fired created a poison cloud, and if enough darts landed, the cloud would turn red, dealing massive damage. What truly made it insane was that even if the Dart Goblin itself was taken out, the cloud lingered for 4 full seconds, continuing to punish anything in its radius, and this wasn't just single target. Everything behind, around, or above the cloud would take damage as well.
I'm gonna have the evolution Dart Goblin, and you're gonna have a regular Goblin. Oh, that poison. The craziest thing about the poison is that the Night Witch, the Golemites, everything behind. Oh my god, your Golem's already dead. Your Golemite's already dead.
Yeah, it's crazy. It does splash damage. Like it's like a poison that does like it ticks in a small area, but does like
your Dart Goblin is still tickling the Golemites.
The Evo Dart Goblin wasn't just a ranged chip card anymore. It became a high-value, board-controlling threat, punishing poor placements and turning pushes into disasters for the opponent. Luckily, it has since been nerfed to where the cloud only lasts 1 second, but I still have nightmares of my entire golem push being evaporated by one single evolved dart goblin.
Let's go with bats. I'm just going to keep log cycling to make sure that we take this tower. And then, okay, let's keep the evolved dark goblin alive as long as we can here. And that is going to be poison on that. Shit, wait. I need the bat. Woo, if he defended those bats, I don't think he knew that I didn't have anything. Holy Dark Goblin poison on the tower has just done absolute shit tons of damage. That's great. Okay, let's go like this. And it killed the Firecracker. What the fuck? Okay, E-Spirit, go crazy. Don't know why I didn't chain that. It seems like I've been holding on to my evolved skeletons for the last 10 years. Fuck. That's on the tower. He's using my own spells against me. Okay, let me go like this. Not another. Okay, so the evolved mortar is... No, the Firecracker! Okay, thank God. How did that not die? I need that to die. Okay, thank God. Alright, let's go with this. Terrible timing there. Okay, at least we have the poison from the Dark Goblin there. And it's going crazy. Thank God for that. I need that. Oh my God, his tower's so low. What have I been doing this whole time? I did not even see his tower's HP. I should have been going way... Okay, it's over. I should have been going way more aggressive early. I just didn't even realize I was like on the... I thought I was on the ropes. He had a ton of HP left. I thought real key.
Earthquake was originally added as a building counter, but during its early days, buildings weren't all that common in the meta. This was largely because Tornado was already a fantastic defensive option, making traditional building-centric strategies less prevalent. Everything changed in late 2021 with the Champions update. Suddenly, Earthquake found its way into Royal Hogs plus Archer Queen decks, and it became absolutely deadly. Champions allowed for a third cycle, and in a cheap cycle deck like this, you could easily recycle Earthquake multiple times. For just 3 Elixir, it dealt insane damage to towers, turning what was once a niche utility spell into a genuine win condition. Since then, though, Earthquake has been heavily nerfed to prevent cycle abuse, but during that window, it was one of the most impactful and feared spells in the game due to zero counterplay. Now, this next one was truly broken in its strongest state. The Elixir Golem wasn't just strong, it was one of the most dominant cards ever released in Clash Royale. At first glance, 3 Elixir for a tanky troop that splits into smaller forms seemed fair, considering you give your opponent 4 Elixir. The catch, by the time the opponent received that Elixir refund, essentially a total of 7 Elixir, it was already too late. The damage had been done and the push was often unstoppable before a proper defense could be mounted. So on release, Elixir Golem was already borderline broken. Its high damage for cost, tankiness, and synergy with support troops made it incredibly tough to stop. But things spiraled out of control a month later with the introduction of the Battle Healer. The healer's continuous aura kept the Elixir Golem, support troops, and herself alive, making these pushes practically impossible to stop. This led to the infamous Elixir Golem plus Battle Healer, Night Witch, Electro Dragon, Rage decks. This synergy was brutal. Drop the Golem, place a Battle Healer behind, then stack Night Witch, Electro Dragon, and Rage. The Night Witch's bats constantly spawned, the Electro Dragon stunned anything in the way, and Rage amplified attack speed, including the Healer, which often increased the healing output. By the time the opponent got any Elixir back, their tower was often already gone. Even hard counters couldn't reliably stop this combo. High damage spells like Poison or Fireball struggled because Battle Healer's aura kept the troops alive, and the Golem's low cost allowed quick cycle back to another push, leaving the opponent permanently on the back foot. For months, this archetype dominated the meta, especially in mid-ladder play. Even pro players were forced to include Elixir Golem in their decks to compete. It's one of the rare cases in Clash Royale history where a bad trade on paper, giving the opponent 4 Elixir, still resulted in game-winning pushes, thanks to the speed and snowball potential of the attack. Eventually, balance changes hit, Elixir Golem's health was nerfed, and Battle Healer's aura weakened, but by then the damage was done. That release period cemented the Elixir Golem plus Battle Healer combo as one of the most broken and oppressive strategies in Clash Royale history. Next up, Goblin Barrel, a card that's gone through a lot of changes, especially back in 2016. The most impactful update that year came when the impact damage was removed and the elixir cost was dropped from 4 to 3. From that point forward, Goblin Barrel only received damage and hit speed nerfs, meaning the 2017 version is widely considered its strongest pre-evolution state. But of course, we have to talk about the evolution. Added on June 3rd, 2024, when deployed, it launched a second Goblin Barrel alongside the first, landing on the mirrored tile in the opposite lane. Once the second barrel hits, it spawns 3 decoy goblins. These decoys have very low health, but deal the same damage as regular goblins. At first, the evolved Goblin Barrel seemed weak. Players could usually tell which barrel was real, but as people experimented, they realized that as long as the decoys were tanked for, it was just like a normal Goblin Barrel, only with split lane pressure. Suddenly, players were being attacked in both lanes at once, making it nearly impossible to defend efficiently. By January of 2025, a brief visual effect was added to distinguish the decoys, but even then, the initial evolution launch still counts as one of the strongest states. So when considering Goblin Barrel, its peak strength is either in 2017 or the first evolved Goblin Barrel. Both were ridiculously oppressive in their own ways. The guards have always been a solid defensive option for years, but their strongest state arguably came in January of 2025. Before then, their shields were practically useless against arrows, especially after the 3-volley arrow rework, meaning they could be taken out too easily. That all changed though when they received a 7% shield hit point buff, allowing them to survive arrows and become nearly unkillable on defense. Suddenly, guards could shut down big threats, stall pushes, and provide insane value, making them one of the most reliable defensive cards in the game. While they remain strong now, especially as a counter to Boss Bandit, this January 2024 version takes the crown. That said, who knows? An evolution in the future could push them even further, possibly into an even more dominant state. The Skeleton Army probably hit its strongest state back in 2016, right after its elixir cost dropped from 4 to 3. At the time, fewer cards could reliably clear swarms, so Skeleton Army could absolutely overwhelm opponents. Fast forward to today, and a ton of cards deal splash damage. Think Evo Dark Goblin, Firecracker, Goblin Demolisher, and way more. Back in 2016, well, none of those existed yet, which meant a well-placed Skeleton Army could completely shut down pushes, punish overextensions, and swing elixir trades massively. It wasn't just a cheap swarm, it was a defensive powerhouse capable of controlling the battlefield, and that early state remains its peak power. Next up, Vines. Even though they just came out, they're probably already at their strongest state. In fact, they've already been announced for an emergency nerf, and by the time you're watching this, it's likely that that nerf is live. Vines are like a freeze and arrows combined into one. They deal damage, slow down troops, and even pull air units to the ground, letting your melee ground troops handle them safely. For a brand new card, it is incredibly versatile and impressive, giving both defense and offensive value in a single deployment. Now onto a spell that really has gone through a ton of changes. Tornado. If you showed a new player the way it worked back in 2016, they would be stunned. Back then, it lasted a ridiculous 3 seconds, had weaker pulling power, and couldn't even damage buildings. Compare that to today's Tornado, which is incredible for pulling win conditions off towers, switching lanes, and activating your King Tower. It's practically a utility spell. But the old Tornado, that was a different kind of monster. Its long duration made it perfect for stalling pushes and clumping units together for devastating splash damage. Pair it with Executioner and you had the infamous Ex-Nado, a combo that could shut down even the heaviest golem pushes for just 8 elixir. Sure, King Tower activations were slower and often cost you a few hits on your Princess Tower, but the sheer defensive power of old Tornado more than made up for it. And here's the thing, I don't think Supercell reworked Tornado because it was weak. Far from it. The rework made it fit into more decks and playstyles, but the real reason, it was too strong when paired with cards like Executioner and Magic Archer. Honestly, that early version might have been Tornado's strongest state ever. The clone spell might not be the most impactful card, but it's definitely one of the most beloved spells in Clash Royale, especially in Goblin Barrel plus Mirror plus Clone 2v2 shenanigans. So what exactly would be the strongest state of Clone? Well, let's break it down. At launch, it had a few big drawbacks. It would reset your own troops' charge, meaning if a fully charged Sparky got cloned, it had to start charging again. The clone spawn time was 0.8 seconds compared to today's 0.5, and cloned units would appear next to the original rather than behind, making them more vulnerable. The only buff it ever received was a radius increase from 3 to 4 tiles. So does that make the original clone its strongest state? Not quite. Sometimes the environment made it stronger than the buffs alone. For instance, Clone has shined in Golem plus Night Witch decks, where doubling your splash or support troops could devastate a push. Then there were glitches that made Clone truly broken. The Lava Hound clone glitch spawned normal lava pups instead of just duplicating the Hound, and the double Guardian glitch with Little Prince could give you 2 full health Guardians for the price of 1, if timed perfectly. There were some other minor glitches too, but none of them as impactful as these. So the strongest state of Clone is a bit subjective, but if you ask me, that Lava Hound glitch takes the crown. It turned a normally niche spell into a devastating board presence with almost no counterplay. Next up, the Void. Unlike the Mega Minion, this is a card that never had a meta named after it, but it was absolutely meta for a time. Its single target damage was insane. For just 3 elixir, it could completely take out a 6 elixir Sparky, which was borderline ridiculous. The attack was so quick that it almost was impossible to block it with another troop, making it a high value support killer. Sure, the Void struggled against swarm units like skeletons or minions, but the sheer elixir efficiency it provided against high cost support troops was insane. Fun fact, the Evolved Wizard, Ice Wizard, and Electro Wizard all inspired something you can see in the official Clash Royale Void intro video.
Ah, yes. This year, the Wizards have a new trick up their sleeves. Introducing the new Wizard Evolution! Tough crowd. Well, I guess it's time for something a little spicier. Wait, is that cinnamon? That is how the Void spell came to be. Not sure if all that went according to plan, but hey, at least we have a new spell.
Overall, the initial release of the Void was its strongest state, and during that period, it was a staple in nearly every deck. Next, Miner. And honestly, his strongest state came very early on. Shortly after release, he received a 6% HP buff, and then just 1 month later, his deploy time dropped from 1 second to 0.75 seconds. That's it. That's peak Miner. From that point onward, nothing but nerfs. And no, I am not joking. Today, he deals only 25% Crown Tower damage, down from 40% in 2016, has 6% less health, a shorter melee range, and a slower hit speed. The 2016 Miner was straight up better in every single way, making that early period his undisputed strongest state. Hashtag Nerf Miner. Next up, Princess. And just like Miner, her strongest state was at release. She had more damage, a bigger splash radius, and more health. Basically, just everything was better. Here's a fun fact you might not know. Back then, legendaries could go up to level 6, meaning the Princess and Ice Wizard could easily be higher level than any other card in the game. This was later removed, but during that window, she was even more oppressive than the stats alone suggest. Since then, nothing but nerfs. Every change after her release chipped away at her power, making her initial launch version the undisputed peak state. Next up, Ice Wizard, and just like Princess, his strongest state was at release in 2016. While he didn't have his modern spawn effect, a few key things made him incredibly powerful. For one, legendaries could, reach level 6 like we just talked about, giving him an immediate edge over most other cards, and the competition for defensive units was lighter, making him the go-to choice for shutting down pushes. The main thing that truly set him apart though, a small HP increase that let him survive Fireball, which was huge for maintaining defensive value and supporting your counter pushes. All these factors combined made the 2016 Ice Wizard the peak version of the card. Then we have Royal Ghost, and in its most broken state, it was absolutely terrifying. One of its standout features was insane movement speed. The Ghost could zip across the battlefield faster than most defending troops could react, making it nearly impossible to control its positioning. This meant that it could slip past defenses, reach the tower quickly, and avoid a lot of damage, whether paired with a tank or deployed as a surprise in the middle of a push. Its damage output was equally insane. For just 3 elixir, the Royal Ghost dealt splash damage, allowing it to take out swarms like goblins or skeleton army effortlessly while still posing a threat to high damage troops like Musketeer or Electro Wizard. That combination of high damage plus area effect made it versatile on both defense and offense. On top of that, the invisibility after combat made it ridiculously hard to counter. After attacking, the ghost would vanish almost instantly, dodging tower shots and enemy troops alike. This meant that it could bypass defenses like an underground Tesla while continuing to chip away at your tower or clear swarms. All of this came at just 3 elixir. Fast, hard-hitting, splash damage, and untouchable after attacking. Its low cost allowed for constant pressure, letting players cycle it repeatedly and forcing the opponent to overcommit elixir to defend. In this state, the Royal Ghost was a game-changing card, capable of sneaking through defenses, chipping towers, and surviving thanks to its quick invisibility. Bandit and her strongest state came out in 2018, after a series of buffs to her charge time, hit points, and minimum charge distance. These tweaks didn't make her overpowered, but they perfectly balanced her mobility and damage, making her the most effective version of the card. She was fast, durable, and could consistently threaten towers without being easy to counter. Nothing that broke the game, but she shined in a variety of decks, especially those that relied on quick counter pushes. An honorable mention goes to when there was a glitch with Mega Knight where the Bandit could chain multiple dashes onto the tower, a rare, unintentional interaction, but a fun example of how strong her charge mechanics were at the time. As for the Fisherman, his strongest state came right after his first major balance change. Originally released at 4 elixir, he was underwhelming and rarely seen in decks. But when his cost was reduced to 3 elixir, combined with an 11% damage increase, he became insanely strong. During this period, the Fisherman could control enemy troops with ease, thanks to his short windup on his hook, higher damage, and increased hit points. He made defending against pushes effortless and could pull key units out of position, completely disrupting the opponent's game plan. From that point forward, he only got nerfs, damage reduction, slower hook mechanics, and HP tweaks, so this window after the elixir reduction represents his peak power. When Little Prince was first released, he was straight up busted. His attack speed scaled up much quicker than it does now, which meant he could start melting through troops way faster than players could react. But the real problem was his ability, summoning the Guardian. On release, the Guardian wasn't just a tanky body to protect him, it dealt a ridiculous amount of knockback and had a longer range, making it way harder to deal with than it is today.
The Little Prince is broken. He can fully counter a Goblin Barrel and a Hog Rider at the same time. But it gets even crazier because he can stop a Mega Knight from jumping in mid-air. The Guardian's knockback is stronger than the Mega Knight's jump, and it fully counters the Mega Knight. The Little Prince can also shoot across the river to snipe any buildings. If your opponent tries to counter it with archers, you can use an ability and the Guardian will go over the river. He can also survive a fireball, and just him and his Guardian alone can take an entire tower. This one is for your satisfaction. There are so many skeletons coming towards us, but one ability can take them all out.
And if that wasn't enough, there was a completely broken interaction with Clone. If you cloned the Little Prince and timed his ability just right, you would spawn not 1, but 2 full health Guardians for just 3 elixir. That was insane value, and it made pushes basically unstoppable if you pulled it off. So yeah, without a doubt, the Little Prince's strongest state was his release version. Fast scaling damage, a Guardian that felt impossible to kill, and one of the most abusable clone glitches in Clash Royale history.
Is when you clone the Little Prince and pop the ability at the same time, it gives you 2 Guardians. I'm going to do it right now. You have to do it right at the same time. You pop the ability, you hold down the ability and the clone spell, and you just like let go at the same time, and look at that. It's already GG's. Yeah, that should literally just be towered down right there. I love this glitch. It's really, really fun. I really recommend you guys try it out, and I guess you got to see in action right there. Nice. Okay, wait. I think it's time. Not Skellydrags. Little Prince. Clone. Please, please. Nice! I got it! Wait, bats? I have 2 of them. How do they defend? I'm gonna Skellies on the right so I don't lose my tower, and then I'm gonna go for the... Wait, do I even need anything? Is this tower down? Please, 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 please. Oh! Let's go!
On to the first 4 elixir card of this video, the Skeleton Dragons. The Skeleton Dragons were never that overpowered, but a little after their release might be one of the strongest showings of them. During this time, Fireball Bait was a very viable strategy, and they fit into it perfectly. When the Evolution Mortar dropped, it instantly shot itself into the spotlight as one of the most absurd evolutions we had ever seen. Its very first shot came out way faster than the normal mortar, which meant you couldn't drop a quick troop in front to block it. You were guaranteed to eat damage if you you weren't already prepared. And if that wasn't enough, every shot also spawned a Goblin, adding even more lane pressure for absolutely free. But here's the part that a lot of people overlook. The Evolved Mortar didn't just shoot faster or summon goblins. It also came with a 20% health buff. Suddenly, what was once a relatively fragile siege building became way tankier, surviving longer and getting off more shots than it ever should have. The result? Mortar decks basically stopped existing without the evolution. Nobody in their right mind would run the regular mortar when its evolved version was this strong. Between the faster first shot, the goblin spawns, and the tankiness, the Evolved Mortar on release was one of the most dominant evolutions Clash Royale has ever introduced. When the Evo Tesla was first released, it came with a simple health buff. On paper, that sounded decent, but honestly, it wasn't enough to make people drop everything and build decks around it. For a while, the evolution just felt like a slightly tankier version of the original Tesla, nothing game-breaking. Then came the real game changer, the pulse effect after destruction. Suddenly, the Evolved Tesla wasn't just a defensive building. It became a building that punished you after you finally managed to take it down. That death pulse cleared out swarms, chipped away at supports, and could even help soften up win conditions trying to push through. This mechanic allowed Tesla to shut down threats it normally had no business handling. Beatdown pushes that would usually overwhelm it suddenly had to deal with a last-second burst of damage on top of the building's already solid defense. It was like giving Tesla a second life, and that alone pushed it into its absolute strongest state. No doubt about it, the version with the death pulse was peak Tesla evolution. Fireball hasn't really changed much outside of its crown tower damage. Over time, it's taken several nerfs to its tower damage, but one of the biggest hits came in 2022, when its knockback was reduced from 1.8 tiles to just 1, almost cut in half. That change alone made Fireball way less threatening for disrupting pushes. Because of that, Fireball's strongest state goes all the way back to 2016. At that point, it not only had bigger knockback, but also dealt a massive 50% damage to crown towers compared to the 30% it does today. That combination made it one of the most reliable spells in the game, capable of both heavy chip and massive control on a single deploy.
Let you play, all right?
Okay.
I'm gonna let you play.
Fireball!
God damn it!
Mini P.E.K.K.A on the left, saving the elixir. Mini P.E.K.K.A. Fireball coming in!
Jesus, put the fireball down, dude. The giant doesn't attack troops. Remember, you have to defend.
Giant!
God damn it, put the giant away! The mini P.E.K.K.A slaughters the giant, run!
Arrows, arrows, arrows!
Why? Just hit the troops with the arrows, not the fucking tower!
So, Mini P.E.K.K.A has always been a solid card, sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker, but if we're talking about its peak, it was probably in early 2016. Back then, the game had way fewer swarm units like guards or Goblin Gang, and air units weren't nearly as common either. That meant the Mini P.E.K.K.A didn't have nearly as many distractions to worry about. Instead, it was the go-to tank killer. Dropping one against the giant or golem was the perfect answer, shredding through them for a huge positive trade. At only 4 elixir, you were getting insane value out of a card that could completely shut down some of the biggest win conditions of the time. Musketeer has always been one of the most reliable cards in Clash Royale, fitting into countless decks over the years and acting as the backbone of classics like 2.6 Hog Cycle. She's always had the role of consistent, long-range, single-target damage that never really goes out of style. But her evolution, that's been a game changer. At first, the evolved Musketeer wasn't all that crazy. It felt more like a neat upgrade than something meta-defining. But after her damage buff, everything changed. Suddenly, she wasn't just reliable, she was a real threat. Her evolution has made her especially dangerous in balloon cycle decks where her ability to shred defenses and apply pressure has become borderline oppressive. And honestly, looking at her right now, September 2025, I'd say that this is her strongest state yet. Even compared to her most iconic moments in the past, Evo Musketeer has pushed her to a new level of dominance. A lot of these were just so busted on release. It's crazy. Anyway, on to the Goblin Cage.
It grabs troops, drags them into the cage, and beats the shit out of them. Deleted.
This card has always been a solid defensive option, typically used to stop Hog Riders or Giants, but with its evolution, it completely changes how you approach it. Suddenly an evolved Mega Knight comes hopping your way, you drop the Goblin Cage, and that Mega Knight is toast. Its strongest state, though, actually came right after release. At that time, it received a crucial buff. The attack interval was reduced from 1.1 seconds down to 1. That small change made a huge difference, allowing the brawler inside to dish out damage faster and reliably shut down pushes before they could reach your tower. And you know what he does inside that cage? I'll leave that up to you. Ever since the Goblin Hut rework, it's become a legitimate threat on defense. The rework was so strong that it's already been nerfed twice since then. The updated version boasts more health, increased range, and spawned goblins faster than it does today, making it a powerful tool for controlling the battlefield and supporting your pushes. Nothing comes close to this rework. It always was a kind of spammy card that just annoyed people.
See what he has for this. Might have, yeah, KS guards. Let's just snowball the guards here. Come on, Ken on the tower. Oh, forced out Ice Wiz. I'm really happy with forcing out the Ice Wiz. Wait, we can Knight here to keep this alive. Nice. It's going to spawn like 3 or 4 Spear Goblins before it dies. Wait, that was a really bad Goblin Giant. What the heck was that, dude? What? Why did he do that, bro? Look at all the Spear Goblins we're going to have. And NATO doesn't kill them either. Wait, let's get a drill and holy shit. Yo, look at the Spear Goblin army. Bro, wait, let's Evo Snowball this. Guys. Oh my god. Yo, look at all of that.
Next up, Valkyrie. Believe it or not, her strongest state is right now. Why? You guessed it, the evolution. Seriously, the evolved Valkyrie is a complete game changer. Her spinning attack can now completely shut down something like a golem while simultaneously clearing out swarms like bats or skeletons. The combination of her increased health and the tornado effect makes her one of the few units that can tank, deal solid damage, and clean up support troops all at once. If you thought Valkyrie was just a mid-tier defensive card before, her evolution has turned her into a must-respect powerhouse on the battlefield. The evolved Battle Ram really showed how terrifying a Battle Ram could be. Not only did it spawn evolved barbarians on impact, but it could also connect multiple times to a building, meaning a simple Tombstone was no longer enough to stop it. On top of that, it could easily clear swarms like skeletons and push back hefty units like knights. But if we're talking about the strongest state, yeah, gotta go back to release. Back then, the Battle Ram could push away anything, including a P.E.K.K.A. It was raw, unstoppable, and honestly kind of terrifying to face. The end of 2019 was probably when Bomb Tower shined the most. But first, a quick nod to its beta version. Back then, all buildings had way more health, damage, and range, basically like playing Clash of Clans. And while it was tanky, that alone did not make the Bomb Tower meta. The real peak came at the end of 2019, when Bomb Tower got death damage and the meta gave it a starring role. Why? Elixir Golem. This card was a nightmare to deal with, and Bomb Tower became the go-to answer. There weren't many other defensive buildings that can handle swarms and deal splash damage reliably. Sure, Mortar existed, but it wasn't a true defensive building. In this meta, Bomb Tower wasn't just useful, it was essential. Flying Machine used to have a 1-second hit speed before the 1st of April in 2019 instead of 1.1 seconds, so there you go. I don't like facing this card ever, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. The Hog Rider's peak was early 2016, right after beta. Statistically, it wasn't wildly different, just slightly faster attack speed and around 6% more damage than today. But what really made it broken wasn't just the numbers, it was the meta. Back then, players ran fewer defensive buildings and Hog Trifecta dominated the latter. Every push felt punishing and Hog Rider could consistently chip away at towers with minimal interference. An honorable mention goes to Hog Freeze. This combo wasn't just strong, it was terrifying. Pairing the Hog with the Freeze allowed you to completely lock down the enemy defenses while the Hog chipped away at the tower, making it one of the deadliest combos of the time. The main reason Hog Rider was so strong though was Freeze itself, but we'll dive deeper into that in a second. Early 2020 was the strongest state of the battle healer. She's simply had more health, but the main reason was the meta. You know what, let me just show you instead of explaining.
You're not going to be able to kill it because the battle healer is going to be able to heal up the Night Witch, I presume. This is going to be really fun. In fact, I probably can just go in for a Magic Archer for some more chip damage here, and then go in for another Elixir Golem, and I think we might just be able to take the tower. This is ridiculous, right? I just spammed everything at the river, and I think we just took another tower. I don't know how this works, man. How did they think this was okay? We can just go for skeletons and body block for the bandit, and then, yeah, the second Elixir Golem that we somehow cycled back to is taking a tower already.
If you've been playing recently, you already know that the furnace has just peaked. Even without its evolution, it was in its strongest state yet, spewing fire spirits consistently and controlling the battlefield like no other. But then came the evolution, and oh boy, what a monstrosity. The number of fire spirits, it turns out, absolutely ridiculous. It's like having a mini fire spirit factory on the battlefield for just a single card.
Oh, the furnace is cooking. We can get another furnace at the bridge maybe just to be annoying. And then use Fireball. We have the Brawl. Kind of look at all the fire spirits. Dude, holy shit. Insane. Skelly drags down the middle here because he can't Fireball the furnace if I do that. Oh my god, look at all that. We have like 5 fire spirits. Look at the fire spirits. Oh my god. Let's go. It's still alive! Oh my god!
Every push becomes a nightmare to handle, and even the most disciplined defensive decks struggle to keep up. The Evolved Furnace isn't just strong, it's borderline broken, and it's safe to say that this is the Furnace at its absolute peak. I'm gonna say 2021 was the strongest year for Zappies. This is because I just found out that they could forever stun a Mega Knight, and this is absolute cinema. The next one kind of flew under the radar during its most powerful state, the Goblin Demolisher. It was released alongside the Goblin Curse and Goblin Machine, both of which were absolutely busted at the time. But don't get it twisted, the Goblin Demolisher itself was no slouch. Back then it had faster attack speed, and its death damage radius was a massive 3 tiles. That meant not only could it deal heavy chip damage to towers, but it could also punish swarms and support troops around it, making it a surprisingly versatile threat. Baby Dragon's strongest state is definitely now with its evolution. That thing is a complete monster. The speed buff it gives around him lets it revive beatdown pushes that would otherwise struggle, but even back in early 2016, Baby Dragon was no joke. There were far less competition for air units, no Inferno Dragon, no Phoenix, just fewer flying units in general, so it could dominate the skies and support pushes more reliably. The combination of decent damage, tankiness, and lack of counters made it one of the top air troops of the time. Its evolution just takes that to a whole new level, letting it fit into almost any beatdown deck and still survive long enough to deal significant splash damage. Dark Prince's strongest state. I mean, statistically, you might think it's the later versions with buffs, but I'd argue that early 2016 takes the crown. Back then, in April of 2016, the infamous P.E.K.K.A double Prince deck was dominating the meta. The Dark Prince was essential. Without him, you couldn't run, true double Prince. His stats may have been lower, less health, slightly slower attack speed, but that barely mattered. The meta amplified his impact. With fewer counters and less versatile air and ground units around, the Dark Prince could charge into pushes, hit multiple units, and synergize perfectly with the P.E.K.K.A and Prince. The early game synergy made him feel much stronger in practice, even if his raw numbers were technically worse than later buffs. The Freeze Spell. It's one of those cards where the strongest state is basically obvious. If you think the current freeze is annoying, sure, you are not wrong, but back in the day, it was downright insane. The absolute peak was the very first release on January 4th, 2016. That version had a 4-tile radius and at max level could freeze troops for a staggering 8 seconds. No damage, sure, but think about it. 8 seconds of absolute shutdown with a bigger radius than now. That is long enough to completely lock down a push and let your win condition just run wild. Compared to today, it's basically a supercharged version, and that first rendition truly defined the Freeze's most broken and game-changing state. Poison worked incredibly well with the Giant. Back in its peak, it was insanely strong, so much so that the meta was actually called the Goizen meta. Why was it so good? Well, first off, Poison used to last 10 seconds instead of 8. Same total damage, but spread over a longer duration. That longer presence meant your Giant was constantly protected from swarms while moving toward the tower. But the real kicker wasn't the raw damage. It was the slowing effect. Poison didn't just reduce movement speed like some weak debuff, it also decreased attack speed, much like Ice Wizard, while still dealing consistent fireball level damage. Skeletons, minions, and other small units were no threat while your Giant plowed forward. Was this its absolute strongest state? well, it still didn't one-shot skeletons, so it wasn't perfect against things like Graveyard, which, I mean, wasn't even in the game yet anyway, but let's be real. If an entire meta is named after a card, it's safe to say that this was Poison at its absolute peak. Rune Giant had a rough start, released super weak and only really viable, I guess, paired with Berserker. But then came the buff that changed everything. It could enchant troops indefinitely, even if it died. Suddenly she became a nightmare to deal with alongside units like Little Prince, Inferno Dragon, and the Mighty Miner. That synergy made Rune Giant legitimately broken. She was nerfed pretty quickly after that, and honestly we haven't really seen her in the meta since. Hunter. Oh my, Hunter. Now that I've got the Evo, I am living the dream. But back when he first released, before I had access, he was even more absurd. His net lasted a full 4 seconds and the cooldown was shorter, making him insanely oppressive. He could literally shut down anything. Lava Hound bowled straight to the ground. Tanks, support units, pushes, you name it. It was unreal, definitely his strongest state, hands down. The Goblin Drill. This might be the first evolved card where its peak was actually in the unevolved state. Back then it spawned more goblins upon destruction, traveled faster, and dealt more knockback. Don't get me wrong, the evolution was insane too, but in terms of sheer raw power, the original version just edges it out. Electro Wizard was at its absolute strongest right when it first released. For 4 Elixir, you got a card that would spawn in with a zap, and with every attack, essentially resetting the charge and attack of key units. Its spawn zap made it an incredible counter to Inferno Towers, Sparky, and even support troops trying to back up a tank. Back then the competition wasn't as intense, so the Electro Wizard could really dominate the pace of the game. Its ability to simultaneously slow down 2 troops while dealing consistent damage made it a versatile defensive and offensive tool. Basically from day one this card was a game changer, and its strongest state has always been that release version. The Inferno Dragon's evolution ability really pushed it into its strongest state. Before the evolution, it was mostly a tank killer. Its ramping damage meant it could obliterate a giant or golem, but as soon as it switched to a new target, it would lose its charge and have to start ramping up again. That made it weak against swarms or mid-health units like Barbarians or P.E.K.K.A. The evolved Inferno Dragon changed all of that. Now it retains its ramping damage even when switching targets, allowing it to instantly melt through Barbarians, Musketeers, and other mid-health units while still being devastating against tanks. Its survivability and consistent DPS made it one of the most oppressive single-target units in the game, and this version is easily its peak power. When the Phoenix first arrived, it immediately reminded players of Mega Minion's dominance, but with a twist that made it even more broken. Like Mega Minion, it is a flying damage dealer with solid single-target DPS and decent health, capable of taking out tanks and support units alike. The game changer, however, was its resurrection ability. When defeated, Phoenix dropped an egg that, if left alone, would hatch a new Phoenix. This meant even if you killed it, it came back to life for a second, often hitting harder the second time. The short respawn timer forced opponents to waste spells like Zap or Log just to prevent it from returning. Its DPS was absurd for its cost, able to melt Golem, P.E.K.K.A, and Giant while also handling backline support. Paired with a tank, Phoenix could solo clear pushes while chipping towers, and its flying status kept it away from ground-based spells. The resurrection mechanic turned it into a persistent threat that could keep cycling and pressuring opponents, so much so that mirror Phoenix decks became viable again, a rare sight in Clash Royale. Without a doubt, Phoenix's release state, or early iterations before counters were optimized, was its strongest. It combined high damage, survivability, and a second life in a way that made it feel almost unstoppable. Magic Archer in 2019 was absolutely ridiculous. Combine that with this insane 7-tile range, and he could target troops from practically across the arena, taking out supports behind tanks while still pressuring towers. That range alone turned him into a constant threat, forcing opponents to overcommit just to defend. It wasn't just about raw damage either. His piercing arrows created insane value, clearing swarms and dealing chips simultaneously. Honestly, 2019 Magic Archer is one of those cards where every single stat lined up perfectly, making it feel completely broken in the right hands. The strongest state of the Lumberjack is basically tied to the same moment we talked about with Rage. The Evo Lumberjack itself was insane. Just the card alone made him a huge threat, but combine that with the Rage spell synergy from those 8 days in February of 2025, and it was game-breaking. When the Evo Lumberjack died, it spawned a ghost that kept Rage going, and you could even extend it with an actual Rage spell. A combination of evolution plus the temporary Rage interaction is what makes this Lumberjack peak absolutely unmatched. When Night Witch was first released in May of 2017, she was outright broken. At 4 Elixir, she spawned 4 bats on death and generated 2 bats every 5 seconds while alive. Massive value for a single card. Combined with her decent melee damage and high health, she became nearly unstoppable behind tanks like Golem. Her synergy with Clone and Rage made her even more insane. Cloning her doubled bat output instantly, and Rage accelerated their spawn rate, making pushes almost impossible to stop. Placing her behind a Golem or other tank created overwhelming waves of bats that traditional counters like Inferno Tower or P.E.K.K.A. struggled to handle. Her dominance was so extreme that she became one of the most overused cards in Grand Challenges, forcing Supercell to issue emergency nerfs within weeks. Her Geth spawn was reduced from 4 bats to 3, and her melee damage and health were lowered. Even after nerfs, Night Witch remained strong, but her initial release, the full death spawn, high bat generation, and synergy with Clone and Rage, that was her absolute peak. One of the most broken card states in Clash Royale history. The Mother Witch likely peaked in 2021. The most broken interaction, though, is with evolved skeletons. Every time she hits an enemy skeleton, she would turn it into a pig, and with the right setup, this interaction could generate infinite piggies, completely overwhelming opponents. This combo made her one of the most oppressive cards in the game during that period. Her ability to survive spells and generate continuous value from enemy troops defined her strongest state. Versatile, durable, and capable of turning the tide of any match. The Golden Knight's strongest state was right at its release. With a dash range of 6 tiles and a cooldown of just 8 seconds, he could traverse the battlefield incredibly efficiently, locking onto targets quickly and repeatedly. On top of that, his higher health at release made him much more durable than he is now, allowing him to survive longer and consistently apply pressure. This combination of long-range dashes, short cooldown, and increased survivability made the Golden Knight an absolute menace when he was first introduced. The Skeleton King actually started off pretty weak on release. He could be knocked back easily, had a smaller splash radius, and dealt 14% less damage. The next buff fixed all of this, and that's when Skeleton King hit his strongest state. Back then, with a full soul summoning bar, he would spawn 20 skeletons instead of the 16 he spawns now. That extra skeleton spam made him far more oppressive and capable of overwhelming defenses like nothing else. The Mighty Miner's peak? Definitely December of 2022. That's when he got the speed buff from normal to fast, making him a terrifying rush threat to towers. If you want an honorable mention, there's the glitch where he became invisible and untargetable. Absolutely chaotic, though not officially his strongest state. Barbarians really shine with their evolution. Big surprise. The Evo Barbarians had significantly more HP, and their attack boost was a massive 50% instead of the current 35%. Now, I'll have to say, the original Barbarians were a solid defensive pick in early 2016, but to me, the Evo version takes the crown as the strongest state. Minion Horde has been one of the worst cards lately, even with their recent range buff. They still struggle to find value because of all the counters in the game. Back in early 2016 though, they were amazing. The only real answer were arrows, fireball, or wizard. Nowadays, Executioner, Firecracker, all the spirits, and other cheap splash units completely shut them down, making early 2016 easily their strongest state. Rascals on release were actually pretty solid, thanks to higher stats, faster attack speed, and more hit points that made them punch above their weight. They were never truly broken, but they saw some play in log bait decks, even if it was never a dominant meta force. The Giant's strongest state was during the Giant Poison era, or Goizen as we discussed earlier. The Poison's 10-second duration and slow effects made the Giant nearly unstoppable, letting it plow through swarms and support troops while steadily reaching the tower. This synergy is exactly what made the Giant so oppressive at that time. Inferno Tower's strongest state was probably early 2016. Back then, Giant and Hog Rider were common win conditions, but there were far fewer ways to counter it. Zap didn't reset the charge, lightning wasn't around, and cards like Electro Wizard or Electro Dragon didn't exist. The only real threat to it was freeze, which made it incredibly reliable at shutting down heavy pushes for its elixir cost. Wizard has been pretty terrible for a long time. Back in early 2016 and beta, he was only ever used in niche decks, but his evolution completely changed that. The evolved version gave him a shield that dealt knockback and damage on destruction. 4 tiles of pushback, by the way. His shield also had a lot more health, which meant he could actually survive longer. The main reason this made him strong is that he was no longer left at 1 HP after a fireball or poison. Suddenly he could function as a real defensive threat while still providing high area damage, making him much more viable than before. As we discussed during the Earthquake section, 2021 was dominated by decks that could reliably pair Royal Hogs with Earthquake and Archer Queen. This synergy made the Royal Hogs incredibly strong, allowing them to bypass most defensive structures while chipping away at towers and support troops. On release, they were good, but without that meta backing them up, they didn't reach the same level of dominance. The 2021 environment amplified their value and let them truly shine. As we've seen with her evolution, the Witch's strongest state is clearly right on the release of her evolution. Every skeleton that dies around her heals her, stacking constantly in big pushes. This means poison barely dents her health, and Fireball alone can't reliably stop her. Paired with Graveyard, she becomes a self-sustaining nightmare, capable of completely overwhelming towers and punishing opponents who cannot deal with her swarm.
Let's go for the Evo Witch here, and you guys are going to see, like, look, the Witch is above max HP right now. It's going to take some damage here from this Prince, but once my skeletons die again, the Witch is going to get all the way healed up. Okay, I'm just going to Tombstone here as well. And then once these skeletons are about to die, look, the Witch is starting to get healed. It's about to be full HP again. Look at that, guys. This is what I'm talking about. The Evo Witch is crazy. Okay, he goes for the Evo Mega Knight. Let's rage this. Dude, that Witch, it took a Mega Knight spawn in damage, and it's more than full HP right now because of the overheal mechanic like the Evo P.E.K.K.A has. I'm going to Witch again. Let's scar me in the other lane, guys. And this is what I'm saying, dude. You literally can't kill this. With this combo that I have, I don't think it's possible to take out the Witch. I can just lightning his Witch away, and then we can rage up mine, and we almost have another Witch, but this is going to be the third Witch and the second Evo Witch. Look at this, guys. He might Mega Knight again. There's the Mega Knight. Let's Evo Witch. Look, it's still full HP. It hasn't taken a single damage. It's literally impossible to kill. We have two Evo Witches. He goes for a Skarmy. It doesn't matter because the skeletons are dying. Witch is already back at full HP, and we have another Witch, bro. Good game. This is absolutely insane, guys. I think this may be the most broken evolution yet. I'm not even kidding.
The evolution made her way more than just a support troop. It made her a central win condition in some decks. Lightning or Rocket was a must during this meta.
Let's not do anything. I think we should let this go, honestly, guys. I think I should let my Witch die. The first Evo Witch dying ever. I think I should just let that go and build up a massive push, because I have two Elixir Collectors down. I think I can get a Witch in each lane, and I don't think he's going to be able to stop everything. It's just going to be impossible, I think. Just get a Curse down here just to defend everything. Wait, what was that Skarmy? Let's arrows this. This is why I have Curse in here, guys. There's just so many skeletons. Okay, let's go for the Evo Ram here. Then we go for the Ghost. We can Evo Witch on the left here because he may go for some Barbs. Let's Skarmy behind this as well. So if he goes for the Barbs, then the Witch is just never going to die. Yeah, he's going to get 3-crowned again, dude. He's going to get 3-crowned again. Let's go for the Bandit. Let's go for the Battle Ram. Bro, what am I watching, man? What am I watching? Okay. Dude, what am I even playing, dude? Dude, this is not Clash Royale anymore, guys, and he's 3-crowned again. Wow.
Balloon's been scary at multiple points, but two eras really stand out. Early 2016 was brutal thanks to Lava Loon and Balloon Freeze. With Lava Hound tanking and Balloon behind it, it was hard to stop due to the lack of air counters in early of 2016. A single push could easily wipe out a tower. Then, if you used Balloon with Freeze, you could easily shut down defenses, while your Balloon bombed away. Then fast forward to the end of 2024 with Lumberjack P.E.K.K.A Balloon Freeze. This synergy was insane. The Lumberjack and P.E.K.K.A absorbed everything while the Balloon zipped through, and Freeze could guarantee the damage. Both periods really showcased Balloon at its peak. Prince, oh man. If you think his charge is scary now, June of 2024 was on another level. He only needed 1.5 tiles to trigger his charge, basically kissing your tower and still charging and hitting you for double damage. He was absolutely everywhere and unbelievably annoying to play against. Don't get me wrong, early 2016 with P.E.K.K.A Double Prince was strong too, but nothing comes close to this June 2024 version. I am honestly praying he never gets an evolution. Hands down, Electro Dragon's strongest showing has to involve the evolution. But even pre-release, he was pretty insane. Back then, he had infinite stun. Yep, he could literally keep chaining his attacks on the same target, locking units down endlessly while dealing crazy damage. Luckily, Supercell removed that infinite stun before release due to community feedback. But even before the nerf, the Electro Dragon on release was still a monster, constantly stringing attacks and melting through units with ease. Now he deals 33% less damage after the first 3 chains, but the guy on release was disgusting. If I'm being honest, the bowler never really was a threat or anything overpowered, but stat-wise, he's probably the strongest right now. He's decent inside of Lumberloon as well as some giant graveyard variants.
Defensive giant, defensive boulder. Wait for the skeleton barrel to explode, that way we can safely snowball. That lumberjack's not gonna be great. We gotta kill that lumberjack. Nice, boulder's gonna roll this all back. Arrows come through. Boulder hits the Evo Muskie. That's a W! What happened to my tower? What happened to my tower? What happened to my tower? We got the win, but what just happened? We got the win, but what just happened? 3 wins.
Executioner's release version was unquestionably his strongest state. On its own, he was already a menace with insane range and splash mechanics, able to hit both units coming and going, and due to a glitch, he could clump enemies together and reset attack animations. But what truly cemented this version as peak Executioner was the Tornado synergy, also known as X-Nado. The old Tornado pulled troops perfectly into his sweeping axe attacks for way longer, allowing him to annihilate pushes for just 8 elixir. In this state, he could stop tanks, shred swarms, and control the battlefield like almost no other card, making this hands down the most powerful Executioner we have ever seen. Cannon Cart's strongest state was likely during the summer of 2024, inside evolved mortar decks. Back then, it still had its shield, making it extremely survivable. Even when targeted by spells like Rocket, only the shield would take damage, allowing the Cannon Cart to stay on the battlefield longer and provide consistent support for the mortar push. Its durability in this setup made it a surprisingly high-value card, proving how strong it could be without even needing direct offense. Ram Rider's strongest state? Honestly, that was on release. Sure, she's been strong recently in the P.E.K.K.A Rage meta, but when she first dropped, her snare was brutal. Nowadays, it slows enemies by 70%, but on release, 100%. That meant troops literally could not move at all while she was on them, and it didn't just stop there. She also completely blocked off the spawn of units like Witch or Night Witch, making her a nightmare to deal with on both offense and defense. Graveyard's release date was definitely one of its strongest showings. Unlike now, Poison didn't fully counter it, and the skeleton spawned in a more random pattern, making it much harder to predict and defend against. This randomness added value and pressure, allowing players to get more consistent chip damage and making the card a real threat right out of the gate. The Goblin Machine's strongest state came shortly after its release, when it had insane synergy with Mirror and Rage. Its rockets fired incredibly fast, dealt full damage to crown towers, and combined with Rage could unload a relentless barrage in seconds. Hell, Mirror made this even scarier, essentially doubling the rockets and creating constant pressure. Its health allowed it to survive long enough to keep on firing, making it a versatile threat on both offense and defense.
That literally just killed the little prince in almost one tap. Okay. Yeah, this is looking good. This is great gameplay. Holy sh! He's gonna land. Look at the king! Look at the king tower!
During this peak, the Goblin Machine wasn't just strong, it dominated the meta, forcing opponents to overcommit just to stop its damage. This card was so broken that it revived Mirror as a viable win condition and became central in multiple decks. And when Mirror is back in the meta, you know you made an overpowered card. Before the emergency nerf, there wasn't much that could handle the non-stop rocket output, making this release era state its undisputed strongest showing. The Archer Queen's strongest state was absolutely during the 2021 Royal Hogs Earthquake meta. As we've touched on with the Royal Hogs, this era was all about synergy and oppressive combos, and the Queen fit perfectly into it. With her cloaking ability, she could deal massive damage while remaining undetected, and at the time of release, no one carried Lightning, her main counter. On top of that, there were a couple of game-breaking bugs. The Mega Knight couldn't deal spawn damage to her while she was invisible, and she was immune to splash damage while cloaked. Combined with the already strong meta tools like Earthquake, this made her essentially untouchable in her peak state. Players could use her to shred support troops or towers with near zero risk, cementing this release era phase as her strongest showing. Then we have the Goblin Stein, whose strongest state was right at release in October of 2024. At that point, its lightning link lasted 5 seconds, dealing massive damage to both troops and crown towers, had a short cooldown, and perfectly combined the monster and doctor mechanics. This meant that it could simultaneously apply pressure to push while punishing multiple units at once. Its timing and synergy made it extremely hard to counter. Opponents couldn't just ignore it, and even strong defensive setups struggled to survive the constant chain damage. Essentially, its release version could dominate both offense and defense, making it one of the most broken new cards of the time. Monk's strongest state was on release in 2022. There's a theme here. At that time, he had better stats across the board, more health, higher damage, and a sturdier attack, while also costing less elixir. This made him incredibly efficient, able to counter a wide range of troops while still providing strong value for just 4 elixir. His ability to shut down key units like the Archer Queen or high-damage ranged attackers made him a staple in many decks, and the combination of lower cost and higher stats meant that he was simply more threatening and versatile than he is today. Rune Giant's strongest state has to be the first iteration of his evolution. Compared to his release, the evolved version came with more health and increased knockback, making him an absolute nightmare to deal with. His pushes could easily disrupt defensive setups, especially paired with support troops, and his durability meant he survived longer under fire. Honorable mention goes to 2016 when the Rune Giant received that insane range buff, outranging every building except Expo and Mortar. That version was incredibly oppressive, allowing him to chip away at towers while staying mostly safe from defenses. But honestly, Evolution just took everything up a notch. More health and even more knockback than it does now. It was just nuts. Elite Barbarians reached their strongest state shortly after their release in late 2016, following a significant balance update on December 15th, 2016. This update increased their hit points by 19%, boosted their damage by 14%, and reduced their attack time interval from 1.5 seconds to 1.4. These enhancements made Elite Barbarians exceptionally powerful, especially when paired with the Rage spell. The combination allowed them to charge through defenses with overwhelming speed and damage, often resulting in devastating pushes that could quickly take down towers. Their ability to eliminate tanks and buildings efficiently made them a formidable win condition in many decks. Without the Rage spell, Elite Barbarians were still a significant threat due to their increased stats and faster attack speed. They could effectively counter various units and apply consistent pressure, making them a staple in the meta during that period. However, their dominance led to subsequent balance changes aimed at reducing their effectiveness. Despite these adjustments, the period following their initial buffs marked the peak of their strength in Clash Royale history. For Rocket, figuring out its strongest state is actually incredibly easy. Ever since its release, the card hasn't had any direct balance changes, except for one single thing: Crown Tower damage. Over the years, that has been nerfed again and again, dropping from 50% all the way down to 25%, and honestly, thank God it was, because Expo players would have had a field day with the 2016 version. So yeah, the original 2016 Rocket is clearly its strongest form. It simply dealt more damage, and that's exactly what Rocket is all about. The only thing it didn't have back then was the little goblin hitching a ride on top. So while its original might have had better stats, at least now it's got peak design. So, Barbarian Hut has pretty much never been good. Every now and then it pops up in some weird experimental deck, but that's about it. Honestly, its strongest state was probably early 2016. That's not because the card was actually strong, but because players just didn't know what they were doing yet. In other words, Barbarian Hut's peak power came less from the card itself, and more from people simply just being bad at the game. The Elixir Collector in early 2016 was just flat out broken. Back then, it didn't just generate extra elixir, it was practically a defensive building as well. With its crazy high health, you could actually defend pushes with it, soaking up hits like it was a cannon, and to make it even more insane, it only cost 5 elixir at that time, while still producing positive elixir trades. So not only were you ramping up your economy faster, but you were also dropping down what was basically a brick wall in the middle of the arena. It was the perfect mix of unfair and unfun. The Giant Skeleton's 2016 version was a whole different monster. Today, his Death Bomb is more about zone control, forcing your opponent to split up pushes or avoid the blast entirely. But back then, it was a full-on nuke. The bomb didn't just scare troops away, it outright deleted entire pushes. Tanks, support units, swarms, if they were anywhere near that radius, they were gone. It made him one of the most frustrating defensive tools in the game because no matter how well you built your push, if a giant skeleton waddled on into it, the whole thing just went up in smoke. Lightning on release was decent, mostly used to snipe annoying mid-health troops like Wizard and Witch, but it didn't really stand out. That all changed about 8 months later when it got one of the most important buffs in Clash Royale history: the ability to stun and reset enemy troops for half a second. Just like Zap, this reset was absolutely crucial for shutting down Inferno Dragon, Inferno Tower, or Sparky, making Lightning a must-have in many decks. At that point, it wasn't just about raw damage anymore, it was about utility. You could reset key threats, delete supports, and still chunk towers for a hefty 40% of its damage. In Golem beatdown decks especially, this version of Lightning was absolutely perfect. It cleared out supports, stopped Infernos from melting your tank, and gave you a clear path to win. Later on, Lightning would remain a key answer to some of the game's most oppressive cards like Archer Queen, the Evolved Witch, and even Goblinstein. But if we're talking about its absolute strongest state, the version right after the stun buff is the easy pick. It had everything: high tower damage, clutch resets, and unmatched synergy in heavy beatdown strategies. Goblin Giant. Its strongest state is definitely around August of 2025. This was when it could fully shine in the meta with Evo P.E.K.K.A. and Goblin Curse decks. On the Goblin Giant's evolution release, it was decent, but it didn't have the insane presence that this meta allowed. With Evo P.E.K.K.A. providing a massive tank and Goblin Curse adding extra chip and damage amp, the Goblin Giant could push lanes almost uncontested. Its damage output and survivability were perfectly complemented by these synergies. Anyway, this version wasn't just about raw stats. It was about being part of a system where every piece amplified the other. The combination of tankiness, Goblin spawn pressure, and synergy with some of the strongest cards in the meta made August of 2025 unquestionably the peak for Goblin Giant. Expo. Its strongest state was probably back in beta. At that time, it could target air, had way more health, and an insane range of 13 tiles. This meant that it could lock onto towers from almost anywhere while defending against air troops like minions or Baby Dragon, making it incredibly oppressive. Combined with its durability, it wasn't just a win condition. It was a fortress that could dictate the pace of the game. This version of Expo was undeniably the peak of its power before all the nerfs and balance changes started to dial it back. Sparky's strongest state was probably in 2020 when it had a faster first attack speed. This made it incredibly threatening in opening trades and big pushes, allowing it to fry tanks and support troops almost immediately. Since 2022, Sparky has seen some solid showings in Goblin Giant Sparky Rage decks, but nothing quite as oppressive as that 2020 version. No truly insane moments, just reliable, heavy firepower. Spirit Empress's strongest state came after a series of buffs post-release. The increased HP pool made her extremely hard to remove, and she could one-shot spirits and Firecracker, which turned her into a major threat on the battlefield. While she has been toned down since, that window where her stats were at their peak is definitely when she was at her most oppressive.
And then we got the Goblin Curse here now. Come on. It's just magical gameplay until he plays the Evolved Arc, and then of course everything gets disintegrated in 1 second. But I'm going to go with this. He's going to go for... Oh. God damn, it has so much range. That's what we like to see.
Boss Bandit's absolute strongest state was right at release. She had 7% more health back then, which made her even tankier than she is now. That extra HP combined with her dash meant that she could survive counters that would take her down today, making her insanely frustrating to deal with. Players had to be perfect with timing or risk letting her get a full dash and chip on the tower, which often snowballed into massive damage if left unchecked. Royal Recruit's absolute strongest state was definitely on release. At only 6 Elixir, they were a complete nightmare to deal with. Deploying 6 units for such a low cost meant that even the most prepared defenses often struggled to handle them, making pushes almost unstoppable. Supercell quickly realized how busted this was, and they didn't just raise them to 7 Elixir, they jumped straight to 8 to try to bring the card back in line. That original 6 Elixir version, pure chaos on the battlefield, basically undefendable. P.E.K.K.A's strongest state has to be the evolved version. The insane HP boost it gained made it nearly unstoppable, especially against typical counters like skeletons. Normally you could chip away at P.E.K.K.A using small swarms, but the evolution completely broke that logic. Throwing in a few skeletons just made it tankier. Combined with her raw damage, the evolved P.E.K.K.A became a walking nightmare, capable of shredding tanks and pushes alike while shrugging off what would usually be solid defenses. Absolutely ridiculous.
I'll just go for the Ram Rider. Mortar is about to die here. Hopefully he plays something we can just spell away. Okay, I'll zap here. Nice, Ram Rider is going straight to the tower. P.E.K.K.A is healing. P.E.K.K.A heals twice off of Cannon Cart, which is so broken. P.E.K.K.A's on the tower. Man, okay, that is why Evo P.E.K.K.A can be good.
Oh my god, dude, I didn't know he was gonna P.E.K.K.A. I have to P.E.K.K.A the bridge, but he's just gonna freeze this, and look at how much his P.E.K.K.A is gonna heal. It's so over. It's never been more over, bro. It's never been more over. What, like, I don't even know what to think to do on defense here. His P.E.K.K.A is above regular health, dude. His P.E.K.K.A has like 120% HP. What is this, bro? Oh my god, bro, I'm gonna avoid this. It's so over. Like, I'm not gonna arrows to left, but I probably need to. Battle Ram kite that away. E was at the bridge. The P.E.K.K.A has like double what regular P.E.K.K.A is supposed to have. I'll go for my own P.E.K.K.A here, but it doesn't even matter, bro. His P.E.K.K.A is gonna beat mine in a 1v1 because of how much more HP that it even has. Like, look at this, bro. Oh my god, dude. Clash Royale really messed up with this one, man. How is this a new card in the game?
Electro Giant's strongest state has to be its release version. At 8 Elixir, it already had more HP and dealt more damage than it does now, making it a massive threat. The insane interaction with Hunter meant that every shot of the Electro Giant hit him, killing him instantly, which was absurd. Combined with its tankiness and damage, this made the release Electro Giant a total menace on the battlefield, probably the highest power spike the card has ever seen. Mega Knight's strongest version is absolutely its release version. The jump range was longer, spawn damage was insane, and overall damage was higher. Back then, there wasn't nearly enough reliable counters, making him one of the most oppressive cards in Clash Royale history. Sure, the Mega Knight evolution is strong in today's game, but even that can't compare to how dominant the original release of Mega Knight was in its meta. Lava Hound's strongest state is probably right after the evolved Inferno Dragon release. With that synergy, it became incredibly hard to stop, like a flying tank that drags the game with it. Hound alone was decent, but the evolved Inferno Dragon just amplifies its pressure to near unstoppable levels. Golem's peak state was definitely mid-2017, right around the release of the Night Witch. This synergy was absolutely brutal. You drop a Golem in the back, and the Night Witch behind it immediately starts spawning bats, stacking constant pressure for your opponent. What makes this pairing so strong is the timing and value. The Golem soaks up damage while the Night Witch generates extra units that chip away at the tower and protect the Golem from small counters. Back then, bats were stronger overall, and there weren't as many air-targeting troops or spells that could shut down the combo efficiently. Even cards like Fireball or Poison were less effective because the Night Witch just kept producing more bats throughout the push. Essentially, mid-2017, Golem plus Night Witch created pushes that were almost impossible to stop without a perfect counter deck. The raw tankiness of the Golem combined with the overwhelming swarm potential made it one of the most oppressive beatdown strategies Clash Royale had ever seen. 3 Musketeers hit their peak during the heal spell era. On their own, they were never truly dominant, but pair them with a heal, and suddenly you had an absurd amount of value. The heal spell could restore the full health of all 3 Musketeers even after taking a Fireball for only 3 Elixir. That meant that you could ignore your opponent's main spell entirely and keep the pressure on, making it incredibly difficult to punish them without committing a huge counter push. Combined with the natural chip damage and range of the Musketeers, this version made them borderline unstoppable in skilled hands. It was easily the most broken state they ever had. The first and arguably strongest state of Mirror came in January to February of 2016. At that time, Mirror would replay the last card you used for +1 Elixir at the same level as your mirror. Level scaling wasn't properly balanced yet, so mirroring epics was absolutely busted. To make it even crazier, a February 2016 bug refunded the extra elixir after using mirror, letting you essentially play an overpowered epic twice with no drawbacks. That made it insanely strong, even if commons and rares weren't as effective. The second peak came much later, during the level 16 buff. Here, mirror added 2 extra levels to whatever you mirrored for +1 elixir. This was a more consistent version of a strong mirror since every card benefited from the bonus levels, not just epics. If we're judging absolute raw power, level 16 version wins for sheer practicality and damage potential, but the early 2016 mirror had that wild, no drawback double epic chaos that made it feel completely unhinged. And finally, Cannoneer, Royal Chef, and Dagger Duchess all had their strongest stages right at release. Dagger Duchess in particular was just insane. She could shut down pushes almost instantly, clearing out multiple troops with her fast attacks and knockback. You really had to respect her presence on the battlefield. Cannoneer dealt massive damage for his cost, making him a scary win condition if you built your deck around him. Even alone, he could punish sloppy plays hard. Royal Chef was basically a mini Princess Tower with leveled up troops, giving insane defensive and chip potential. On release, all 3 cards demanded attention and could dictate how the game was played. Whew, that was a lot. Thank you for sticking around. If you enjoyed finding out the strongest state of every single, then I highly recommend watching the day Lava Hound broke Clash Royale. I'll see you there.